I would like to now let you know, everybody, that we have a keynote speaker, and this woman is an icon in Canada, and she is also a friend. And I have been so blessed and graced with her presence over the years. And she is an extraordinary person. She is an amazing woman, an individual, but also a daughter, a mother, and a partner. And so it is a real joy to have her here at this as our keynote speaker on day 2 of Lighting the Fire. So I'm going to introduce you to her. She is Waneek Horn-Miller, and similar to the arduous process of making wampum beads, the journey of that which Waneek Horn-Miller has done doesn't begin and end with being an Olympic water polo athlete. A Mohawk from the Kahnawake Mohawk territory near Montreal, Waneek was behind the lines during the Oka crisis in 1990 when she was stabbed by a Canadian soldier's bayonet. It was a near-death experience that marked a turning point in her life. Waneek has overcome discrimination and violence to emerge as one of North America's most inspiring female Indigenous speakers, facilitators, and advocates with a compelling perspective and dynamic stories to share. Waneek is an advocate for building Indigenous sport and has worked with the Assembly of First Nations to develop their sport, fitness, and health strategy. Please, everybody, welcome Waneek Horn-Miller.
Good morning, everybody. Segos Ganagoaga. I'm asking if your spirit's big today. It is a beautiful day in May, and I'm so honored to be here, to be with all of you. When I got the message from one of the fabulous Keeper sisters, Joy, a couple weeks ago to come and join you today, I was honored. I just wish I could be there in person. I do miss actually getting a chance to speak in person and get a chance to be with all of you. But you know what? This is the next best thing. It is a hard time. It is a hard time for everybody. I'm coming to you from the unceded territory of the Algonquin people, otherwise known as Ottawa. And but I'm from Kahnawake and Ohsweken, where my mother and my father are from. And I'm a very proud Bear Clan woman and a mother of 3. So I also have a couple kids in a room that are homeschooling. So they might pop in here. I told them, unless there's a flood or something, leave me alone. But you never know how that is. Everybody knows the pandemic. There's always something that happens, and it's okay. I mean, I think you'll all understand and get to meet my kids. But I really want to thank Tina for that intro, Elder Lauren, and I do definitely want to acknowledge this has been one heck of a year. It's been hard. It has been challenging. It has been so many things. And I don't even like to use the word unprecedented anymore because that's been used too much. But, it's something that also has made us have to question and think about things like finding our balance. How do we find our balance when the ground we're walking on is so, uncertain? And, as a mom of 3 small kids, it's been even more challenging and a little bit more scary for me. And, I've really had to go back to a lot of my, teachings and a lot of the way I was raised to kind of remind myself that we can do this. And, but I want to share a bit of that story for you. So I am a Mohawk. I'm a former retired Olympic athlete, highly retired. I've been through a few things, but I don't represent anybody but myself. I'm not a leader. I'm not a spokesperson. I am just me. But you might have heard of, other people speak to the same things I've been through. Raised by a single Indigenous mom, dad went to residential school. All of that kind of stuff is in my family as well. And that did leave a mark on on our family, and really was something that we had to manage and deal with as we grew up. So I also went through some other things. And so maybe in my 45 years, I might have a story to tell, and hopefully you take away a little bit of something from my story. So I want to share that with you. I'm hoping you can see this, and not just me, but, finding my balance, at 45, this is something that definitely has been it's a hard fought fight to find that balance. And how do I turn trauma into strength? And this is something that I've learned. This is a picture of me actually playing water polo in Winnipeg, woo, at the Pan American Games when I won gold in 1990. So a little bit of that historical of me playing water polo. Now, I'm very lucky. So I was raised by a single mom, but I'm extremely lucky that she is a fluent speaker in Mohawk. She didn't go to residential school. She went to day school. And she has always told us, if you really want to understand how our people think, it is in our language. And she says, I can't speak for any other of the indigenous languages, but I know Mohawk, we weren't a written language until recently. And the way our language was spoken and developed was our people, our ancestors would see something. They would see something happen and they'd have to describe it. So it's a very descriptive language. But what's cool, she said, is it's also kind of like a snapshot into an experience that one of our ancestors had at that time. And that, if you want to understand how we think and see the world, you have to understand our language. And so growing up, she really instilled certain words and in understanding our philosophy. In the Mohawk culture, we have the great law of peace. We have a lot of things, but we don't have the 7 sacred teachings kind of teachings that they have in Anishinaabe culture. But we do have some very embedded ways of understanding and how we're supposed to live our lives. And a very important word to us is this word. So, Kinanaakomin, really long word. And if you ask a language keeper, they'll always tell you, English is not a complex enough language to explain what we're saying, but we'll try to explain it. And this is basically it's the ultimate power energy in the world. And it's the power of love. And she, for instance, if you say to somebody, you want to say, I love you. It's funny because the word love is overused now to say, oh, I love your shoes, or I love that movie. But when you say, Ezo ganarunquatsara, you are saying something really profound. You are saying, I have this big well of positive energy in me, and I want to share it with you. I love you. That's what you're saying when you say Ezo ganarunqua. And so my mom would often tell me and my sisters, when we were kids, that you really have to make decisions based on love, based on that ganarunquatsara, that teaching. And, she would say, first you have to take care of your body, that body that creation gave you. You have to feed it good food. You have to give it clean drinking water. You have to exercise it. You have to get good sleep, and I mean, I thought as a little kid that she was trying to convince me, to eat my vegetables and, go to bed on time and all that kind of stuff. But as I got older, I kind of understood what she was talking about, because, she would say to us, as we always say, how you treat yourself is reflecting back how you want the world to treat you. You need to take care of yourself so that the world understands. You set that tone. Really, really important. And for 4 daughters, that would prove to be something really important for us. 4 Indigenous daughters. How do we want the world to treat us? But when I got to be a teenager, I remember I kind of was like a punk. Well, you see, I just shaved my head recently to get rid of 2020. And also because I couldn't see my hairdresser. So it was really a problem. But when I was a teenager, I was kind of a punk, ripped fishnet stockings, Doc Martens, all the whole 9 yards. And I always liked to date the bad boy, the guy who had the biggest dark cloud over him. He was the guy that I wanted to date because I was going to fix him. I was going to give him all the love in the world, and he was going to be fixed. Well, I soon realized that you don't get fixed. Nobody can fix anybody if they don't want to be. This is not something that I could do. And, soon those relationships would kind of spiral out of control. And I would soon be my head on my mom's lap and I'd be crying and all this kind of stuff. And, the next thing my mom would say to me, and it was a really profound, simple statement. She would say to me, "Are you showing love for yourself by letting him treat you that way?" And it was like this, very simple statement, but it told me so many things that I had control. I control how I let people treat me, and that, love shouldn't hurt. If I so-called love somebody, why did it hurt me so much? And love should not hurt. And, these things, and making decisions based on love, she would say they, as Indigenous people, we understand they spread to our partners and our families. These decisions, they base, to our clans and our nations. Like, it's really important. She says, but there is a space for anger. She said, because, when I would get sad about things, she would say, don't get sad, get mad. There's something fiery, like a hot chili pepper about anger. It gets you up, it gets you moving, gets you going, it'll give you that energy to do something. But she would say to us, you cannot stay in anger. You cannot stay there, because what happens with anger, acts like kind of like a cancer. It will soon take over all of your feelings, all of your thoughts. And we've all been in those moments where we've been in a fight or something with someone we care about, and that anger you feel just starts to take over and take away your happiness and take away your peacefulness. So she would always tell us, you always have to work your way back towards love, towards empathy, because for your own sake, that is the most healthy place to be. And so I told you, Tina said, I'm an Olympic athlete. Okay, here's a picture of me. It's part of my story, my Olympic dream. So this is me playing in the best game of my career. Okay, it took me 17 years to get to the Olympics, 17. And this is me playing against the Americans in Australia when I was co-captain of the women's water polo team. And I called the best game of my career because, well, it's the Olympics. I scored a hat trick against the Americans, which is always something we love to do, right? Like, we always rise to that. And it was a culmination of not just a lot of hard work physically, but a lot of hard work mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, not just by myself, but my mother as well, and those who came before me. And so this dream started many years before me. It started with a very important woman. This is my mom. Some of you know her. Some of you, maybe Lauren. I know Tina knows her. But back in, for those who don't know my mom, she was born in 1940. She was born in a time where, well, really, like, it didn't matter what race you were, actually. Any woman born at then, is like, your expectations of you were to maybe graduate high school, you got married, and you started a family, and you stayed home and you took care of your kids. And my mom said, that's a great life if that's what you want. She says, but that's not what I wanted. I didn't want to be told what to do, by anybody. She said, I wanted to go see the world. It was something that she wanted to go explore. But it was also a time that my mom, as an Indigenous person, being born in a time where you couldn't vote. If you served in the military, you became a non-native, you became disenfranchised. If you got a university professional degree, like an engineer, doctor, lawyer, you became non-Indigenous. Our children were being taken away and put into residential schools. Our women at that time were being forced sterilized. So these are things that, my mom understood that she wasn't on even playing field. And she became one of Canada's first Native rights activists. And I remember asking her, Mom, what was it that really kind of clicked with you, that this is a path you wanted to go down? She said, well, when I was 14 years old, My mom, she comes from a big family of 9. She would often spend summers and a lot of time at her grandparents' house. And her grandfather is a war chief. And, in our culture, a war chief is a very powerful person, very influential. They are like the chief of police, the principal, and the guidance counselor, all wrapped up into one, right? And she saw him as that powerful person. And our territory is on the south shore of Montreal. And what happened was, the government decided that they wanted to dig the St. Lawrence Seaway. So that would be where all the tanker ships would come in from the Gulf of St. Lawrence, from the ocean, and get into the Great Lakes. And so they expropriated all our waterfront, just took it. And my grandfather fought it and fought it and fought it and went to Ottawa and fought it. And he actually couldn't stop it. And they basically dug to the front of his home where he was out on a farm. He had a farm, and they forcibly removed him and then kept digging right through his home. And she remembers seeing this and saying to herself, the most powerful person in her world had no power when it came to the federal government and the non-native world. And so she became very active in the 60s. Very kind of blew people's mind a little bit. She was a model, very contemporary looking, very, very contemporary, like obviously walking the catwalks and stuff like that. But she also spoke fluent Mohawk, raised traditionally, understood, a lot more about the history of Canada, the reality, treaties, all these things. And so she kind of blew people's minds. And she's well known for a few things. One, you can actually see this online. It'd be kind of cool to check it out. It's a National Film Board film. It's a film made called "You Are an Indian Land," and it actually covers when my mother and a bunch of other activists in Ēkosāni, which is a community that sits half in Canada, half in the States, partly in Ontario, partly in Quebec. And if you wanted to see a relative on the other side of the community, you had to go over an international border, and they'd often give you a hard time. And we have something called the Jay Treaty, which many of you know about. And that's supposed to respect the fact that our Indigenous territories predate that of the US-Canadian border. We have a right to travel that border freely. Well, they weren't respecting that. So early in a January morning, they're all decided to blockade this massive bridge that covers the St. Lawrence. And there's my mom, like all 5'6" of her, 118 pounds. And she's getting arrested and thrown in a cop car and charged with assaulting 22 Ontario provincial police. But sounds like a lot, but if you know my mother, 5 for sure. She's pretty tough, but 22 is a little extreme. So she's known for that. She's also known for letting rats and mice go in the Department of Indian Affairs in the 60s to protest the dumping of garbage in our community of Kahnawake. And, she was a woman who here's her picture of her where she's trying to get into Buckingham Palace to serve the Queen with a letter stating that she's claiming England in the name of the Mohawk Nation. And this guy's asking her, what are you talking about? She says, well, you came to North America and there were millions of us there and you just claimed it. I said, I'm doing it right back at you. And so if you ask my mom today, she's 81, she'll still tell you that England is Mohawk territory. But my mom was a very she traveled. She was, she was really active into the civil rights movement in the 60s. And she was 31 when she started having kids. And that was kind of old, like grandma territory, if you think about it. And here she was, a single mom. And here's a picture of me. I'm third of the 4 daughters. I was born before the digital era. So as you well know, the first child gets a whole bunch of beautiful studio shots. And then I come along, and I think there's 2 pictures of me as a baby. I think I look a little surprised that my photo's getting taken. But my mom was, she understood. She really, really understood better than most the world in which her daughters were going to be being brought up in. And so she knew she couldn't control all of those factors, but she could control a few things. So she made 2 really important decisions in our life. One, no drugs and alcohol were allowed in our home. And this is the 70s. She didn't even let people smoke anywhere near her, house. And I remember asking her, Mom, why was that so important to you? And she said, well, I wanted my girls to dream. I wanted them to dream. And they needed to know when they put their head down at night on their pillows that they were in a safe place, that nothing was going to happen, that their mind didn't have to worry, and be on guard, that they would be the safest they could be so they could dream as big as possible. And, I think about that now that I'm a mom, and what a valuable gift that was for us to have the ability to dream. The second decision she made was as a single mom, she got a job in Ottawa, and she moved us all there, and she rented out this 2-bedroom apartment right across from the YMCA, 2 bedrooms. And she rented out the 2 bedrooms to 2 elderly people, and we slept on a pullout couch. And with that extra money, she put us into sports. And she, at the YMCA, she bought us a full membership at the Y. And she chose sports for us that were not judged sports. She used to say to us all the time, I don't want your nativeness, your Indianness to get in the way. Like anytime a judge or anybody could say, well, you're too weird, you're too different. She's like, I wanted you to race against something that would give us the most fairness, and that's the clock. And so running and swimming is what we became active in. She wanted us to learn. So my mom is, she's not a person who ever dictated, you're going to do this and you're going to do this. But she said, I am raising the next generation of disease-free, high-achieving warriors, her daughters. And in order to get us there, to get to where we wanted to go, our dreams, that we were going to need to have some very important skills that would get us there. And perseverance. Now, holy cow, is that hard to teach? It's hard to teach even more now that we live in more of an instant gratification culture. I have my cell phone here, and we probably all know that a text message, you expect a response in like 30 seconds, right? Think about The Voice, America's Got Talent, all of these shows that kind of chronicle this immediately rise to fame. Whereas in reality, dreams take so long. The perseverance that you have to kind of sometimes have delayed gratification for the work that you're putting in. And 17 years getting me to the Olympics, I'm going to tell you, there was nothing really selfie worthy for a majority of that time, but that perseverance would get me up at 5:30 in the morning in a snowstorm, -25, and in a car to a pool, freezing cold, to swim for 4 hours. That is what perseverance is. And she knew we needed to understand this. And sports was where she thought we could learn this. She wanted us to learn about respect. Like, respect for my mom was really important. But most of all, my mom was a very proud Mohawk woman. She is a very proud Mohawk woman. And if you know anything about Mohawk culture, we have we're matrilineal people. We have a lot of power in our nations. But she would say to us, if I ever hear you making fun of a people of another race and calling it pride, I'm going to kick your butt, because that's not pride, that's racism. She says, you have to remember that our teachings state that before anything, we are human. We're born into this world, a human being. And in your journey to getting where you want to go, whatever that is you want to achieve, you're going to have to make that human connection with a lot of other people to help you along the way, to help you get where you're going to go. So she wanted us to understand that respect and that human connection was really important to her. And then accomplishment. My mom was all about, like, I don't care what you choose to do. You do it to the best of your capability. Our people did not do things half-assed. We do not come from a people who did things half-assed. They didn't have the luxury of doing things half-assed. If our ancestors didn't feel like setting that trap perfectly the first time, their families would starve. They wouldn't catch anything. If they were too lazy to go and collect firewood, their families would freeze. I'm sure many of you have grandmas and cookums and mushums who are, like that. They, do it perfectly the first time, because that luxury of doing half-assed wasn't part of their reality. And, that was really important to say that I come from a people who did things excellently, and that I have that capacity within myself to do things to the best of my capabilities. And she was like, whatever the top of your mountain is, get there. And it doesn't matter where that is. get there and see it and own it and accomplish it. My mom was really, really adamant about showing me what was possible. She was really passionate. And you got to remember, I was born before the Google era. So it wasn't like, you could just Google someone's name and you'd get all that information. You did not know it existed unless someone showed you. And so my mom was all about showing me and my sisters about Indigenous people achieving. And this in 1984 was a really big year because that year the Olympics was being held in Los Angeles, and a Mohawk from Kahnawake was competing in the final of the men's 1,000 meters kayaking, and he ended up winning the gold medal. And I remember when he stood up on the top of that podium and bent down to get his medal, and he lifted over his head an eagle feather. Wow, I cannot tell you, I still get a feeling in my stomach of just how amazing that was to see a Mohawk best in the world. It was like the glass ceiling that I had thought was there was gone, smashed. And knowing that someone from my community even was best in the world showed me that I could do that. And I remember saying to my mom, I want to go to the Olympics. I really want to go. And she looked at me, she says, okay, you can do it. And I'll help you. And that same year, a film about this man came out. His name is Billy Mills. Maybe some of you have seen this film if you're my age. It's called Running Brave. It's actually made by Disney. And it's about Billy Mills he's a Lakota from Pine Ridge, South Dakota, right in the middle of the Badlands of South Dakota. And he went on to get an NCAA scholarship for track. Really awesome track athlete. NCAA, but he had never won a major race in his life. And he went on to qualify for the 1964 Olympic team. He qualified for the final of the men's 10,000 meters, and he went on to win it. And I normally show the last lap of his race, but the audio is not working. We tried to work it out earlier, but I remember. So if you know anything about his race, so it's been his final lap of the men's 10,000 meter. That's 10 kilometers. Is voted one of the top 10 finishes in Olympic history. Now, why is that? Why is it voted that? Well, he gets to about the last 200 meters of the last lap. He's in third place. Nobody's around him. And he gets to the final straight away. And one of the rules that I always learned when I was a track athlete was you don't go near anybody on the track because someone can hit you, they can trip you, they can do all this stuff to you. And you just try to stay away from people. Well, he gets into that last straightaway. He gets hit. He has to run way out, come back in, and he sprints by the defending Olympic champion and the world record holder to win the men's 10,000 meters. And many years later, obviously, I got to actually work with him. And I remember the first thing I asked him was, Billy, I said, why did you, you're in third position. That's a bronze medal. No, you cannot have a popsicle right now. Okay, have a popsicle. Sorry, guys. It's my son. They know when to ask me for things, right? When I'm presenting, because I can't say no, right? Anyway, so I remember asking him, I said, so you're at the 200 meter mark, secure bronze medal, and why would you chance it? You got into the scrum. You could have been tripped. You could have fallen. Anything could have happened. And he said, the first thing he said to me was, you know what, Waneek? Number one, I didn't train to come third. I trained like I was going to win the gold medal. And he said, and sometimes when you have a dream, you will put 98% of yourself on the table and you keep back just a little bit of yourself. And he said, you know why you do that? I said, no, why? He says, because in case of you fall, in case you fail, that little bit of yourself, you need to pick yourself back up. He said, but you know what the best thing about being Olympic champion or being a Native American is? And I go, what? He says, I come from a people. We come from a people that if we fall, they will pick us back up. They will dust us off and they'll keep pushing us forward. So he said, what did I have to be afraid of? He said, to give that extra 2%, to give everything I had. He said, it was a gamble. I could have tripped and fallen, or I could have been Olympic champion. And I chose to put that last 2% on to see what I could achieve. And, that really, really stuck with me. The willing to give everything, to not be fearful of giving everything you have, and trusting that you have a people around you that are going to support you. And that means everything. That means everything on a journey to success, a journey to your dreams. You got to trust that support network, and you can't do it without that support network. You need it, and I needed it as well. Now, summer, you guys are all going to be hopefully watching the Olympics. Maybe you're some athlete buffs out there. But one thing you'll notice, and I used to always think about this when I'd be watching the Olympics, and I'd see these Olympic people getting their medals, and they'd be looking at the medal and they'd be crying, and I'd be like, oh, what? Why are they crying? Like, what is that? And, when I finally made it to the Olympics, and when I got a chance to hold I didn't win an Olympic medal. Okay. I'm just letting you know I came fifth, but I understood it's not necessarily that last race or that last tournament that really defines that medal. It's when you look over your shoulder and you look at the journey that you have walked, you have run, you have crawled, but also the decisions you've made. And many times throughout my career, I sat in a fork in the road when things happened to me, and I said, am I going to quit, or am I going to keep going? And you cry because you're so thankful that you kept going. But those obstacles can be momentous, but they define your journey. They define the power of a dream, because these obstacles are what you have to get over to get to that end dream. And for me, that happened during the Oka crisis when I was 14 years old. I remember, it's funny, as it's becoming summer, it reminds me of that summer after grade 9. I was kind of sleeping in, and the Oka crisis breaks out in Kahnawake, in Kanesadake, and we were fighting to stop the expansion of a 9-hole golf course to 18 holes. And I remember, I still think back to that summer and what I saw. Like, I remember when I sat at night on the blockades in Kahnawake and saw the race riots. I had experienced racism as a kid. I had, and I'm sure a lot of you have. But these were things like, I dealt a lot with my fists, or if it was at a sports competition, I could sometimes reckon it with my physical ability as an athlete. But when I saw those race riots, I was terrified, because they hated me not because of me, but because of what I was, a Mohawk, a Native person. And it was terrifying seeing Mohawks being burnt in effigy. It was so ugly, and it was so terrifying. I remember watching them stone our elders' cars as they were leaving Kahnawake, trying to take our elders into the city to take them to the hospital and to safety, and watching the police do nothing, knowing, like, you brought up your whole life that these police are supposed to protect you. Well, I realized then nobody was going to protect me but my own people. And, I saw a lot of stuff like that, but I also saw a lot of empowering things, really powerful things, like women like Ellen Gabriel and Jenny Jack and people like that standing up and being leaders, spokeswomen, and our men respecting that, holding them up. And I remember watching my people fight off the army when they tried to land in our community with their fists, saying no. I remember watching different protest camps across the country. I remember hearing about the big one in Winnipeg at the legislature, and how people came to lend their support from all walks of life. It wasn't just Native people, but lots of different people smuggling food to us. I still meet so many people over the last 31 years that have told me that was, you got to remember that wasn't the era of Google. And Indigenous issues, the real history of Canada, what has happened to our people, Section 35, treaties, all of these things were it's like systematically being kept out of the education system, being basically trying to erase from history in Canada. Well, every night for 78 days, these things were on the national news, on the front page of newspapers. There was no going back to this ignorance that Canada had purposely put into place. It was now a time for awakening, like being shook awake. And a lot of people say, both Native and non-Native people, it was the moment that first they saw Indigenous, Mohawk people standing up, and it made them proud and it made them want to do similar things. And also non-Native people saying, what is this? And I want to learn more. And why do I not know about it? And, I think about that. And, that whole 78 days of the Oka crisis, and at the end of that day, on the very last day, on September 26th, we decided to come out to end our kind of siege in the area, in the treatment center, the area of the size of a football field. Made an agreement with the army to kind of walk out the front gates and to end the crisis. And at the very end of it, here's pictures of us leaving the treatment center, me and my little sister holding her hand. And at the very end of it, I got stabbed in the chest by a bayonet by a Canadian soldier. And only 22 hours later, when I finally got some medical treatment, the doctor told me, you're very lucky to be alive. Had it been a centimeter either way, it would have gone right into your heart. And, for the next 10 years, I remember what happened, though. For 6 days after this picture was taken, I locked myself in my room. I stayed there. I felt safe. I was terrified to leave. I was suffering from very bad post-traumatic stress disorder. And my mother came in on the 6th day, and she sat down and she held my hand. She says, what do you want to do? And I said, I don't know. I don't want to leave here. I feel safe here. She said, well, Waneek, everybody would understand, but you have this dream of going to the Olympics. And if you stop now, you're handing your dream over to that soldier, and you will be his victim for the rest of your life. She says, but everybody will understand, and I'll support your decision. And she got up, she started to walk out of my room, and she had her hand on the doorknob, and then she turned around and she pointed at me. She says, but you remember, I did not raise you to be anybody's victim. And then she left. Probably not the best way to deal with someone with acute PTSD, but it's what I needed to hear. I just could not spend my life saying I could have. But this happened. So I got out of my room. I went back to water polo, walk onto a deck full of non-Native girls. And had I not had those teachings at a young age about our common humanity, I would have never been able to see past those race riots, all of that trauma I'd experienced that summer. And these girls helped me for the next 10 years as I journeyed to the Olympics, as I made the national team. I went into the national team, and so many times I was in this world, this system that didn't care that I was Native. They didn't care about anything. It was such a indifference to me. And I remember so many times I wanted to quit. I was so tired of it, felt so lonely. And I remember a promise I made not long after this photo was taken to my little sister, who was 4 at the time. I said to her, you're going to be successful. We are going to be, don't you worry, you're going to be successful. And I knew that if I was her biggest role model. She copied everything I did as a little girl. And I remember looking at her, and I knew that if I quit, I was showing her how to quit. And the only way she was going to know how to succeed was if I showed her how. So I promised her, I'm like, okay, one more day, I'll go back. And some days that would be a week of promises, a month of promises. But those promises and that little girl watching me and my love for her it got me to the Olympics. And, you know, I think about that, and when you see and what we're going through right now and everything that our people have been through, we are resilient. I don't care what anybody says. We're here because we are resilient. We are here because our ancestors refuse to give up and give in. They fought and fought and fought through it all. And we're the generation now that we've inherited all that resiliency, all of that power, all of that never give up. And it's our turn to take it to the next level. Let's not just survive. Let's thrive. Let's go. Let's take it. Let's run with it. Let's fly. Let's take over, you know, because we have that power. Our parents have worked so hard to give us safety, to give us steps to success. They've worked really hard, you know, and I think about that. And resilience is like a muscle. It has memory. It stores and it learns. And every single time we go through something, it gets smarter, you get more powerful. But right now, what we're going through with COVID and everything, that well of resilience that our ancestors have given us, that we have drawn from and reminded ourselves of who we are, our ability to get through what we're going through right now, we are adding to that resiliency of our people, of our whole nations. And generations to come will look back on how we managed right now and how we were able to endure all of this. And they're going to say, we can do it too. They did it. And they came out stronger on the other end. And, you know, I think I just wanted to share as I'm about to end. I know I'm going a little long, but you know that 2 decisions, sometimes we feel like we need to change the world, do everything, can be overwhelming. But what my mom showed me with her 2 choices for us, she was able to make incredible change. Out of that decision of no drugs and alcohol in her home and to put us into sports, and her stick with itness, always having our back. Sometimes that's the only person that had my back was my mom and my sisters. We're a team. And this team was able to have Dr. Ojisto Horn. She's the woman on the very left, first Mohawk woman doctor from my community. The other end is Dr. Gahandi Horn Miller, professor of Indigenous Studies. And then my little sister right in the middle, Ganyadio. She's an award-winning actor now and a mom too. She's got a little boy. And she might know her from some shows called, you know, Letterkenny. She's been in video games, Assassin's Creed. Like, she's awesome. And if you're interested in having a good laugh, she does a podcast with my mom called Coffee with My Ma about some of my mom's antics back in the day. And then there's me. I went to the Olympics. And so finding balance, it's something that you need to work at. You need help with. And remember that you are someone's role model. And don't be scared to try. Don't be scared to give everything of yourself, because this team approach that we have as a people, we're always working together to help pick ourselves up and to dust ourselves off. So we really need all of you to dream as big as possible and to come out of these gates roaring and taking over. So I want to thank you so much, and I will stop sharing. Is anybody there? There you are.
Hey, oh, Miigwech. Waneek, I love hearing you speak. It's absolutely energizing and so powerful. And like you say, you actually inspire that energy that says, yeah, I want to, I want to just keep going, and I want to build, and I want to thrive. And it's so, I guess the whole, really what I find is that it's so real. Like, the fact that, you talk about, you are so real as a person. You come across as, just such a lovely, gracious, kind, caring person, generous person. And, you don't have this feeling that I'm in some from some different category of life than, you know, the rest of people. So it's, you do, like, your sharing is very inspiring because of that. And I think that people feel a lot of when you share is also the idea that it breaks the idea that somehow you're different than other people. You know, like a lot of people think that people that have, you know, a lot of success or have succeeded, they think that there's been no challenges. They think that's why they've succeeded. You know, and what you've shared is that you have succeeded almost like, you know, the challenges are opportunities to learn, like from your, like what your mom said, going back to the story about your grandfather, right? To, and what that lesson learned was, and then moving forward and how she, you know, figured out how to protect and incubate her children and what that did. And, you know, I'm wondering if that there is, like, how are you finding it as a mother? Like, and especially now too, in this challenge of the pandemic, can I just ask you that?
You know what? It's funny because, you know, I just, the one area of my life, like I'm pretty confident as an athlete and done a lot of speaking and in all that. I'm confident with people, but the one area of my life that I have always struggled to find confidence is in parenting. So I don't ever give parenting advice because I'm like, holy crap. The only time I'm going to be able to say I did a good job is when I see my children like my age. I'll be like, okay, oh, I did a good job. Okay. You know, but, you know, because I stress and I antagonize over every decision. And I really call upon the people around me. Well, what do you think? And, you know, my mom and, you know, and I, you know, especially with the time of COVID, you know, like for instance, you know, before COVID happened, like my kids maybe got an hour of TV a night and only iPads when we were on the road somewhere, right?
Right.
It was a special thing. Now it's like screen palooza. Like it's just
Right.
crazy. These are like parenting rules, and you're just like, oh gosh, you know. Um, I I think that it is hard, and I can't imagine. I'm so humbled by what my mother achieved with us, what she was able to do, because I'm in it right now, and I'm like, it's really, really hard. And I think it's a daily thing, right? I think a daily thing where I say to myself, "Whew, okay, my kids they're good people. They like each other, and hopefully they grow up to be kind." You know, like it's funny because I think, you know, we talk, our generation, we've talked before, Tina, about, oh, remember when we were kids and, you know, remember like you know, you talk about the poverty, right? You talk about poverty, you joke about it, or the hard times or the third hand clothes and all these things that we grew up. And it's kind of like that rite of passage is that maybe that made us who we are today. Well, all parents are like, I'm going to do better. My kids are they're going to have what they need. They are going to, you know, they're not going to school in third hand clothes. Like but then you worry. I'm like, well, maybe they need a little more hardship to, how do you kind of give them all that love without taking away the learning and the appreciation? So that's what I try to, you know, I'm
Right.
trying to kind of manage that because I want to take out of the equation of being Indigenous, out of it for future generations is take out the poverty that's no longer part of who we are, take out
Right.
the trauma that's no longer who we are, that we are healthy and that we are, you know, we are amazing, you know,
Right.
and we are rich beyond, you know, and not just monetarily. So, you know, it's a bit hard. I'm not going to say I'm perfect at it.
Well,
Yeah.
I have to say that I'm so grateful, as I know our viewers and our participants are. I just want to share, you know, a few comments. Wow, definitely an awesome keynote speaker. Before we are anything, we are human. She quoted you. Such a beautiful spirit you have, Waneek. Thank you for the presentation. That was Another one said, my friend took that photo of the young person holding the eagle feather. It was a picture of his grandson. Excellent presentation. So, it was, your presentation was really profound. And I found that like sharing with us, your journeys, what like that, and the challenge to your journey as an athlete, which was just something that was probably one of the most horrific experiences that anybody could ever go through. And, to be able to like hear your mother and to be able to feel that and know that she's always there for you, that safety and protection, like she will take you there. That is so blessed, like that story. But I always think that one of the things that, my late auntie had shared with me was that miracles are real things, and that's what your story reminded me of. Like when we talk about miracles and those blessings, those are real. And that's really what I got from you. And it's just like, and there's and in the resiliency and the power is all the beauty. It was a really, really beautiful presentation.
Just two things. I mean, yesterday I got a chance to speak to a whole bunch of students, high school students out in Ontario. And one of them asked me, do you think you'd be the person you are today if you hadn't gone through that Oka crisis? And I've actually been asked that a few times. It's like, or what's the one thing you could have done without? And even in myself, I'm like, I think to myself, would I have been who I am? But then I remember, like my sisters, my older sisters weren't at Oka, and they're really successful.
Right.
And they became doctors and they're ass kickers, and then also,
right.
I think that if I had not, I was a good athlete even before that. I was like provincial champion in swimming and all these things. So I'm going to tell you, I probably would have I would have enjoyed the process more. There was such a hard edge to me. There was such a hard edge to me, that entire thing, that I didn't enjoy it as much as I could have. And that's what I want my kids. I want our kids to enjoy, enjoy life and enjoy their successes and enjoy the moments along the way, and not feel that sense of overwhelming urgency that I felt pretty much throughout my career. And, another thing that people often ask me, speaking about my mom, and she, they always always ask me, what's the best memory of your Olympics? Right? That's the question I get. And I mean, of course, it's playing at the Olympics and doing all that kind of stuff. And obviously playing at the top of my game and scoring many goals at the Olympics. It's always a prideful thing. I remember I actually had to, because this is before cell phones, I had to fight Venus and Serena Williams for a phone booth to call my family. And I won. But I met Muhammad Ali.
Wow.
But that's not the best memory of my Olympics. So the night before my first game was, I called my mom, and I was going to play the Russians the next day. And I called her and I said, Mom, how's everything going? And she's like, oh, how are you going to see us? How are you going to see us are you going to be able to know that we're there? And I'm like, yeah. And my little sister grabs the phone and she says, don't worry, we got this covered. And I'm like, okay. So I show up at the game the next day and I'm being marched out, and then, we had to get introduced to the crowd. And there's like thousands of people up in the stands, and I'm scanning the stands, and my eyes come to rest on a girl who had dyed her hair fire engine red, like literally sticking straight up, like a firework went off on her head. Right. And I'm like, oh my God, her face is painted. She's got this big sign saying, go, Waneek, go. And I'm like, people in Kahnawake still say they saw her more on television than me. Okay. Like the crazy fan. And so, and then there's my mom. My mom is just holding herself like this, and she's got beautiful green eyes, and she's just crying. Just tears. I could see tears running down her face. And I thought to myself, oh my gosh, someone was mean to my mom. Like, what? I'm looking around, ready to go. And I couldn't get up there. I couldn't talk to her. So I had to play, and we played our game and did all the media stuff. And then I finally get up there. And by then she's not crying anymore. And she's hugging me. Oh, Waneek, I'm so proud of you. I'm so happy. And then I say to her, I said, Mom, why were you crying? And she said, oh, it reminded me when you walked out for your first game, it finally dawned on me that you were at the Olympics. And when I remember when you were 7 and you looked me in the eye with the big eyes and said, I want to go to the Olympics. And I got down on my knee and I said to you, I said, I promise I will help you. You can do it. I will help you. And she says, over the last 17 years, there were so many times we didn't have food. We didn't have heat even. There was times where I thought I wasn't going to be able to help you. And she said, when you walked in, I realized I was able to keep my promise, and I was proud of myself as a mom. And she was crying. And I'm telling you, that's the best feeling in the world, is that if we can, make our mothers cry once because they're so proud. She's cried so many times because she's been mad at me, but you can make them cry once because they're proud of themselves. That is my goal, is that all of us, that we do better, and like, you never know if you're doing the right thing. It's always a gamble, right? And that fear, but yeah, it's really awesome. And I'm working really hard to try to make more opportunities for our young women and girls, and, stay tuned for some new stuff.
Keep doing so, Waneek. It was such an honor to hear you speak today. And I just have to thank you once again on behalf of Lighting the Fire. Miigwech, Kinanaakomin. It was an incredible way to start our day, and thank you.
Now we'll go on. Take care, everybody.